openers.
So we have this from Raw Egg Nationalist, and he basically just says that Matt Walsh really has come a very long way in quite a short time. And many people also who had clipped the same clip that's floating around, also saying similar things, like it looks like Matt Walsh is going to be on the right side of this discussion, this debate, this conversation, whatever you want to call it. And let's just hear what he has to say here about Shiloh. And again, any issues, just let me know. I will adjust.
Yes. I hope she raises $1 million. I will not be joining with some of my conservative friends in wagging my finger at her donors, and I'll explain why. First of all, she does have a legitimate need for the money. The mob is truly trying to get her killed. I don't believe that a woman should have her life threatened for saying a word, even a bad one. And you could say freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequences for your speech, all you want. But if losing your livelihood and having your house burned down is a consequence of your speech, then you do not have free speech. Supporting free speech means supporting someone's ability to speak without having their family murdered for it. Okay? I mean, that should be pretty obvious. Second, more importantly, and this is the part that I really need everyone to stop and think about. This is the most devastating attack on cancel culture that we have seen, possibly ever. Shiloh Hendrix has, without really trying, effectively ended cancel culture. As Mark Dice said in his video about the incident, Shiloh is the final boss of cancel culture, or maybe rather the final boss that cancel culture has to fight. And I think that's right.
I agree wholeheartedly there. Now, I'm not sure really how far you could honestly take it, but especially in the video itself, right? It's post the actual event happening. The video recording of what most people are outraging over is kind of like her defiance and her unwillingness to kind of grovel and apologize to the man who thought he had her in a gotcha moment. Like, we'll see what the internet has to think about this. And I actually agree with them. There's some things I wanted to put on the outline today. In particular related to this, actually a lot more like reaction from like the Black community at large and some of the more viral clips that we've seen of how they feel and how they're reacting to it. And the majority of them, I mean, truth be told, like are basically just violent. I mean, they're like just calls to violence. They're basically saying like, if you think this way or feel this way, this is why you need this, or you need this to your head, like things like that. And then you also have like what Sandra Fairbanks had pointed out yesterday, which actually got worse. Dominic Michael Trippi, you can find him on X, has been highlighting some of these things too. They've been going after her kids, right? So first it was the CPS thing, basically saying like her kids shouldn't be there. And now it looks like people are actively calling for violence now, not only just against her, but also her children too. Basically saying like, the kid's going to grow up to be a Triple K member, because I guess that's how you say it to get around TikTok rules. And it's just sad. I mean, the kid's like 18 months old. She is getting targeted. And like I had mentioned in the last episode that we did, she is getting photos of her house sent to her and posted on public platforms tagging her, which I'm sure probably slowed down because I would imagine she probably has untagged herself or maybe even privated or deleted her social media profiles. I'd imagine that's a smart thing to do when you're in this situation. But it is. I mean, I agree with the statement that's against the cancel culture, the defying that you will be bent to the will and be told that you must accordingly say a certain word or march in a lockstep, or that, one group of people is allowed to say this word and every other group of people is not allowed to say the word. And you're basically getting a lot of individuals who are saying, well, everybody can say it or nobody can say it. It's like, those are the two reasonable options. Anything else is kind of logically inconsistent. It makes no sense. And you can't operate in a society when certain things are held to these, ridiculous, disparate standards. And I think it's kind of a good segue. We'll go ahead and get into the longer one of this too, actually. And I actually am very glad that Matt Walsh is coming out on this side of the discussion here. Let me go ahead and switch browsers here. I'm going to add this in over. Dang, if it would work. There we go. So he titled this and posted this himself, actually. And this is them saying that people are sick of the racial double standards and that they're fed up, and it's just that simple. Now he kind of eloquently ends this also by saying that he doesn't think this is even the beginning of a race war. He doesn't think this is the beginning of anything of that nature. He thinks this is more so the end of people putting up with what and nobody will ever talk about, right? Which is all of these racialized double standards. And that's what he thinks it is more of. And I can see that too. However, I don't have too much faith in that the people on the left will see the error of their ways or will back down from this. I think this is more ground for them to go harder. And I think the left is basically, that's what we've come to understand them as, is they escalate. Not to say like the right doesn't. I mean, the right typically is like a speed bump, but the left will definitely escalate, and they do hold these ridiculous, incoherent beliefs. So my faith in that they will simply kind of back down from this, or, let her, win, if you will, by proxy with the GoFundMe or the Give Send Go, I'm unsure of. But again, here's Matt Walsh on a longer, broader take of the Shiloh Hendrix situation.
The mob that tried unsuccessfully to cancel Shiloh Hendrix was far, far more outraged over Shiloh saying the N-word than they were over Carmelo Anthony stabbing somebody to death. Indeed, many of them actively supported Carmelo Anthony murdering Austin Metcalf. They rewarded him financially for it. And this is all part of the preposterous racial double standard that has defined American culture for generations now. It is a double standard that declares it a greater crime for a white person to say a word than for a black person to kill a white person. In fact, killing a white person could even be a just punishment for saying that word, according to these standards. The rules surrounding this word, the moral weight granted to it, the arbitrary guidelines drawn around it, it's all nonsense. It's all indefensible on both moral and intellectual grounds. People are fed up with it. That's what you're seeing in this story. People are just fed up with it.
No, I even characterize this too. Like, I think there's really two camps of this, the people who are fed up with it. Now, he might characterize this more so as like people just being fed up with maybe just the multiracial kind of culture and kind of the social norms that we've kind of built, obviously not being written, but what we've kind of, inherently, intrinsically have come to understand what is acceptable socially and what's not, as it is, crafted via brute force, via media, or also anecdotally experiences people build as they grow up, and go through high school and social institutions and gain an understanding being with people. And I would separate it into two groups. I think there are the groups that is, yes, very anti, like they'll say like nothing good was about the situation, but they also don't condone any of like the doxing and things like that. But they can see the point of like, hey, like, yeah, this is kind of ridiculous over just a word. This is insane. We just saw you do this with like the Carmelo Anthony and he killed a kid. Like, that's ridiculous. And then I think there's also a secondary camp that's getting more bold, getting broader and bigger, who would more accurately characterize this in their terms as something like black fatigue, which is they go even a step beyond that, which is basically saying like, not is it just like not just about race, but it's more so about one particular group that has a heavy emphasis on, and those kind of relations there. And, people say AF or BF or whatever you want to put in there too. But ultimately, I think there are two kind of distinct groups in there, and it's hard to tell which one's really the more prominent one of the two. Because like I've been seeing both as I've been on X. Not really sure like where you guys stand out as on chat. I mean, when I made the Shiloh Hendrix video that I posted a little while ago, at least the people that I typically follow a lot more of, like the Andrew Torbas and the Andrew Iskers and like the Joel Webbins and the Woes and the Stone Choir, that lends me to think that it's more so about the specific, more black fatigue than it is purely like being against cancel culture, if that makes sense. And that's at least what I've been seeing in my corner of the internet, which again is a bit more radical and extreme than I would say the average mainstream conservative is. But to catch up on some comments before I go back to the video here. Nice to see you, Andrea. Glad you made it in. And it is funny about the quartering video that you said there. And Tix is also saying that he doesn't think that Shiloh Hendrix was wrong for what she said, but she also shouldn't be rewarded for it either. But yeah, and then Jay adds in there, swatting is how far they're taking it now. Yeah, and the thing is, and here's what I would say with that too. I don't really see it as like rewarding her, more so than it's like, we all know that like once an incident like this goes viral, right? Say you're Papa John, or you're any of these individuals who's like in the recent like 3, 4 to 5 years has said anything that could be deemed as racist, right? Especially when you go as far as like, saying the N-word, right? Which is the biggest no-no of all time, right? You can blaspheme God for you can say the N-word in America. It's kind of insane. But I see from that, the people giving her the funds may see it as like they're giving money purely because they're glad she said that word. But I more so see it as we all watch that and we know that the reaction is going to be that there are people who are going to try to harm her from simply saying that word. And we all know it. It's like all in the back of our heads subconsciously. We all know it. We know that someone's going to be coming out there. They're going to try to put a hit on her. They're going to probably like maybe try to damage, maybe do something with her children. And so I don't even see it as rewarding her. I see it as almost like a necessary thing. It's like now we have to, because we know that she is going to be targeted, and we don't even like subconscious anymore. We have the evidence with the photos. We have the evidence with the doxings and all the attempts at the school having to pull the children out. We know what's happening. So I more so see it as like a defense fund, like I hope you stay alive for longer than next week kind of fund. Because that's what I see happening. And especially with all the videos that I can't even show on YouTube, the majority of them go to these lengths where they're saying like, well, her kid needs this in the head, right? Like she needs something, she needs one of these in the head. And like her 1.5-year-old kid is this Triple K member. He's going to grow up and be a monster. Like all of the dehumanizing stuff that comes with it. And again, right. I don't think it is obviously couth to say those kinds of words to a child. But like I said on that video too, it's not like I experienced it as well myself when I used to live in the city. Like for me, it's easy to understand like how quickly that came off of her tongue at the end of the day. But switching back, and we'll finish this video here. We'll go back with Matt Walsh.
Now that child, if he's like the average black child in this country, did not hear the N-word for the first time from a white woman at the park last week. Okay? He's no doubt heard it thousands of times. He likely hears it every day. He probably hears it in his own home. Are we supposed to believe that he's heard the word 1,000 times, but it's time 1,001 that really traumatized him? I mean, the idea that the word is a common greeting for one race, but unspeakably evil if uttered by a different race, is laughably ridiculous. The idea that one race can say the word 10,000 times a day and the other race cannot speak the syllables under any circumstance, even if they're just repeating what someone else said or singing along to a rap song, that idea, again, is totally indefensible, which is why no one has ever tried to defend it. Instead, it's just yet another, racial rule of the road that we're supposed to follow without ever asking any questions about it or expecting anyone to explain it or justify it. People are sick of that. It's just that simple. They are sick of it. Now, it is simple. If it's wrong to say the word, then it's wrong for anyone to say it. If black people want white people to not say the word, then they need to not say it. If you say it, everyone else can say it. Point blank, it's that simple. That's how life works. Deal with it. No, you can't do that. You can't say, well, no, we can do this thing, but you can't. Doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. Well, it did work that way for a long time. It was indefensible, and it's just not going to work that way anymore. Sorry. And no matter who is saying it, it's not any worse than any other slur or vulgarity. It's not special. The word is not magical. It's not some kind of mystical curse. It's not some kind of dark incantation that conjures evil spirits from the netherworld. It's just a word. It's a vulgar word. It's a rude word. It's a word that I believe polite people shouldn't say for the same reason they shouldn't use any other vulgarity. I'm using N-word right now instead of saying the actual word for the same reason that I would say F-word or C-word instead of those actual words. Those are vulgar words, but that's all. The reflexive, indefensible, capricious, vacillating racial double standards are over. People are fed up with them. They are fed up with the game and they don't want to play it anymore. And that's all that this word has become. That's all that our quote unquote race relations have become. A game with arbitrary rules and incredibly excessive punishments for anyone who breaks them. It's
basically taken on a very kind of toxic power dynamic. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of use it, right? We see this scenario get set up all the time where, even if you were arguing about like nothing, right? Say like you're arguing with somebody in the bar and you happen to be white and the person you're arguing with happens to be black. I've seen this in real life where the argument can be about like your chair touch my chair, stop bumping my chair. It has nothing to do with race. And it's like clockwork. I hear it all the time. Like, what? You gonna call me an N-word? And it's like it becomes a power thing, right? It's like you can just throw that in there, and it immediately is like a massive obstacle you as a white person like have to dance around because of a massive amount of negative social currency that word has become in terms of a mechanism that is basically always used to leverage power. It almost always just takes the air out of any issue and immediately fronts it into that. I see it all the time, and Matt Walsh is knocking out of the park here. And I mean, what did people expect, right? It's like one of those things where it's very, to me, it's like it's a logical thing. You know, something that I saw, I mean, I don't know, like 15 years ago when I was in high school. Like, you can't, it's not going to be this way. You just can't simply expect things to be not contentious operating this way by consistently telling one group of people, not only can they not say the word just like how he laid out, but literally on the other end, the other group of people using it almost in between every other word that they speak. Almost like the SpongeBob episode. I need bus ticket. That's the degree of which the word is used. And then you add it to things like how it's becoming basically like pop culture kind of slang, where even like a lot of girls in the Twitch community and things like that begin saying it too. Now, for the most part, generally that seems to go one way or the other. Either people are like, oh, it's okay, like she had the N-word pass and things like that. It depends on who's going to get upset about it. But at the end of the day, you know, it was always unsustainable. And I think we're faced with a choice, right? We're faced with a choice. Like, do we try to move towards the goal of nobody say it, and we try to push towards a very, very much more polite society, and we all try to find the boundaries of like why it's not okay? I don't see that happening. And especially with the black community, right? They're gonna be like, "What, you're gonna say that I can't say this word that you guys used to me today?" You know, to become the whole victim thing. And the other way, which is, well, everybody's allowed to say the word, and I don't see that working either. I mean, I just see that being more violence, right? Like what TP USA is gonna run a campaign like make the N-word white again, like right? Like what? You think people aren't gonna get harmed from just trying to operate a campaign like that? It's like one of the very untouchable things, and largely because it does come with such an implicit threat of violence if you do use such a word. Yeah, free speech country here in America, right? I don't know. And I just don't think either of the solutions work. I don't know how you would incorporate them without, you know, someone being extremely agitated and irritated out of those groups. I apologize, guys. I feel like I'm not reading your comments enough as we normally would. But then TNT we have here, he says, look how much you get paid to delete a cracker. Imagine how much if it's a famous one that dropped the N-bomb. Yeah. He hears it 6 inches from the mirror every morning. More than likely, I would imagine that he does. And Tix also says, I thought it had no power anymore, but yet anytime it's used by those, not allowed. OMG, slavery has returned. You know, that seems to be the level of which it is gone. And I've always been of the belief, too, the longer that you keep this kind of we can say it, no one else can say it mentality, the more power that you do give the word. It's kind of like you are making sure that it keeps the same level of vitriolic, impact that it had the moment it was, first uttered. And then Tick's also adding in that there are zero scenarios where an actual race war or the outcome after a week isn't. That's why you don't poke the effing bear. I don't even really see it getting to that point too. I think that there's a lot of individuals who are like in this side of history, I should say, the more we've gone to the modern era, violence is such a pushed away thing. And there is such a thing as what I would call emotionalism that does exist on both the left and the right. It's like you basically are like, yeah, you feel that ardently, but the moment you are there in the moment when something actually does pop off and it does become violent, you do see kind of like that first body shock, right? It's not going to go very far. It's like everyone wants to talk, and the moment there's blood on somebody's hand, it's like, okay, hold on, maybe we got to talk this out. I don't really just see it blowing up like that either. But TNT adds that in the 3 years that he's lived here, there's been 3 shootouts at the bar down the street. All 3 times it was typical suspects shooting each other. I think rap music destroyed black culture beyond repair. Yeah. Right. Then I also kind of think back to the kid in the in the Myron Gaines Uncensored America on South Carolina campus, right? He said white people listen to rap music too. They have for like the last 20, 30 years. And it's not like, they've been going out and, popping off, and doing all of the typical suspect behavior stuff. It's tough, man. Yeah, it's really tough. And, like I always say this too, like, I don't think it's a univariable issue either. Like, I think there's multiple variables that come into play here and determine the majority of the things that we see here. As much as I do think that there's a bit more to it than just culture, I do think that there is a predispositions inside of races. I don't know if you can chalk it up entirely to that, especially when there is such an ardent history of what they've happened to here in America. But I think ultimately, again, as much as I want to hold to that and have the benefit of the doubt and hold optimism, I'm confronted with the fact of having to look at Africa and seeing the same things similar there. And, it's not like we had America imposing and, as even in their terms, an oppressive force on them then. So it's like, what's the answer? And I think the longer we kind of dance in this playground with no answer and things just keep happening, the more likely we probably do push that there is a lot more of a violent period of conflict over these racialized lines. It's unfortunate, man. I wish it wasn't a thing here. But we'll go ahead and finish the rest of this video here. We'll let it play out from Matt Walsh here.
It's like the societal equivalent of a child, trying to walk on the sidewalk without stepping on a crack. Eventually, the kid gets bored with it, starts walking normally again, because it turns out that if you step on a crack, you're not really going to break your mother's back. The rules are fake. And eventually, people get tired of following them. Telling white people, and white people only, that they can't combine two specific syllables under any circumstance, it's like telling them they can't touch their head unless someone says Simon Says. Okay? They're not going to play the game forever. White guilt is the fuel that keeps all this going. White guilt is what convinces white people to follow arbitrary rules that make no sense, to tolerate, even defend a system that's rigged against them with blatant double standards. It's what's compelled white people to acquiesce to a culture that says that, every race can and should defend and root for their own, but white people, and white people only, should not be conscious of their race at all. None of it is fair or morally coherent. And the Carmelo Anthony case, where a black teen raked in $500,000 as a reward for stabbing a white kid to death, was, for a lot of people, the final straw. The final straw of many, many straws. It is no surprise that the Shiloh Hendrix case comes on the heels of that. A lot of people online are fretting that this is the beginning of some kind of race war. But I don't think it's a race war, and it's certainly not the beginning. I mean, there's been a war waged on whiteness for a long time in this country. So this cannot be the beginning of anything. But it may be the end of something. The end of racial double standards. The end of cancel culture. This is an ugly story in a lot of ways. But if history has shown us anything, it's that ugly things die ugly deaths.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's right on that point. I don't know. Because here's the thing. I guess on this front, right, is if we're expected to believe like, oh, is this the shot heard around the world, right? Is this the defiant use of the N-word, the shot heard around the world, where everyone kind of goes like, like the Joe Rogan moment, like, oh my gosh. Because I don't see the left letting this go. I don't see the left backing down on these things. Like, their whole entire foundation of what they believe is basically built on the victim and oppressor narrative. And what happens when you start, you're forced into a position where anyone who starts saying like moving forward this position, they have to attack, because otherwise it's like, it's directly antithetical to like what your beliefs is. I just don't see the left laying down on this. So I agree with him. It's not the beginning. I agree with him for sure about that. But I don't think it's the end either. And I just don't see it. I don't see people laying down on this. Now, the thing is, As Tommy Sotomayor did say, though, if the mainstream and mass, a lot more of the kind of regular white people get behind this kind of stuff, then maybe people lay down. But I don't know, when we have such a very effeminate and emotional population, and I just say what it is, I don't know if we'll get there. Because I don't know if we have enough Americans who are, normies, who have the audacity and the balls and the cojones to say, yeah, this is the way it should be. Let's keep it moving. I don't know.